Hello, this is Jeremy Jones, and you're listening to the SnowBrains podcast.
For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with limited
Hello, and welcome to the SnowBrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a professional mountain guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of SnowBrains, and I was such a hardcore ski bum for so much of my life that to save money, I didn't have a car at all from the ages 22 until I was 40 years old. I've only ever had a car for 8 years of my entire life. I rode in a lot of trains and on buses, and I hitchhiked and just bummed rides from friends all over the world. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Icon Pass. Winter 21-22 now on sale at iconpass.com, and the mountain community is locking in another season of stoke, from first chair to last laughs. Across more unique ski destinations and more days on the mountain, now is the time to plan for another year of adventure. Own the season, own the stories, own the stoke. My guest today is the legendary snowboarder, Jeremy Jones. Jeremy is widely regarded as one of the best big mountain snowboarders on earth. He was voted Best Big Mountain Rider of the Year by Snowboarder Magazine 10 times. He starred in over 50 snowboard movies that have been played all over the world, including his own award-winning movie series that started in 2010, Deeper, Further, Higher. These movies are incredible. Jeremy was nominated for National Geographic's Adventurer of the Year in 2013. ESPN ranked him number 12 in their 50 most influential people in action sports. Jeremy is the founder and CEO of Jones Snowboards. He also founded Protect Our Winters, a nonprofit formed to unite winter sports community against climate change. And he did so well with Protect Our Winters that even President Barack Obama recognized him as a champion of change. Jeremy has appeared frequently in worldwide media, including CNN, Outside Magazine and Outside TV, Men's Journal, ESPN, Fox News, NBC, MTV, National Geographic, and now he's even been on SnowBrains. Hello, Jeremy. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, thanks. How you doing?
I'm very happy, man. I'm happy to be here with you. When did you snowboard last?
About an hour ago.
That's
Went to Alpine Meadows with my son for some afternoon corn and some groomers.
Nice, man. How many days do you think you have this season?
I think that was right around my 50th day of the year.
Damn, not bad. You're getting after it. You've done so much. Today, I really want to dig into your pro snowboarding career, your company, Jones Snowboards, and especially your organization, Protect Our Winters, and what you guys are trying to accomplish there. So we'll start with some rapid fire questions, and then we'll drill down into some bigger stuff. How many days do you snowboard per year?
About 150.
Nice, man. How many would you say are backcountry?
Probably about 90 of those. Yeah, 90 to 100 of those are backcountry.
Wow, that's a lot. And what's your main goal when you go snowboarding? Like, what are you looking for when you go out there?
I mean, really, I'm just looking to be tired at the end of the day. I mean, of course, like ride new things, have fun. I mean, that stuff kind of naturally occurs. But as you know, it's like, for me, come springtime, it's like, that's when we're going big. We're doing, these mega missions to those trophy lines. And I want to be strong for those, dozen or so days where everything lines up. So I'm not as concerned with like, oh my God, did I have like perfect pow today or what have you? And it's like, am I getting stronger and building base? Because that like all day after day, I really get into these long traverses too. And so to be able to go for like 10 days in a row, you just need a ton of time on snow.
Yeah, that leads into one of my other questions here. What do you think is the best month to snowboard?
I would take like March 15th to April 15th.
And why is that?
That's when the snow is stabilized generally. I mean, you get these big storms and heavy danger spikes, but it becomes a way simpler snowpack where, yeah, when it snows 3 feet, it's high heavy danger. And then the sun hits it, and 2 days later, it's not. So stuff's filled in. The days are longer. Sun's starting to come around on the due north stuff. I consider like March 10th to May 10th, like that's playoffs for me. That's like, don't fuck with my schedule there. So it's really, those are my 2 months where I really look to be peaking. So for example, it's January right now, mid-January. I'm not worried about winning January or December. It's like stack days. I have no problem having fun out there. So that's the least of my worries. It's just stack days and build base.
What's your biggest accomplishment in snowboarding?
My biggest accomplishment in snowboarding, I would say, is that I just turned 46 last week, and I would definitely crush the 36-year-old and the 26-year-old version of me. So to just be healthy, combination of that with, I just feel so grateful that, I have my health, and in certain areas of the sport are still evolving.
And what's your biggest accomplishment in life?
My biggest accomplishment in life, God, it's hard to look back on stuff like that. But I will say that, like, when I think of proud moments, it's like I was just in a cabin with my family, and we climbed a somewhat remote peak and had a picnic on top, and be there as a family and experience that stuff that's really special to me. I mean, that's at the top of my trophy case.
That's impressive to get your whole family on board with all these very cool lifestyle decisions. I think that is huge. How do you define yourself?
I mean, it's like father, husband, snowboarder.
Where's your favorite place to snowboard?
I shaped much of my life around Alaska, being in Alaska every spring for 6 to 8 weeks. So I love that. And I love the Sierra. I mean, you give me the high Sierra with good snow to the valley floor, and just the magnitude and the size of it, and the fact that I get to still walk into huge chunks of terrain for the first time. And I've literally at this point put in millions of steps into that range. It's been cool to like really try to explore a range one step at a time, compared to say how I've done it in Alaska or places like that.
So maybe safe to say Alaska Range, Chugach Range, the Sierra Nevada.
I'd say Alaska in general, and a lot like Southeast Alaska, Glacier Bay National Park, I would say specifically, that is what I would consider the spine capital of the world. And I am obsessed with spines. So a little bit more Southeast, but all of Alaska is incredible.
I'm definitely going to dive into the spines in Alaska in a little bit later. What would you do if you could not snowboard?
Surfing is like a really right there with me. Surfing and snowboarding are the only two sports. So when I am doing them, I don't think about anything else in the world. I'm not worried. Sorry to my mountain bike and my climbing gear and all these other sports I do. But if I'm surfing, I am 100% content. If I am snowboarding, I am 100% content. So I would say surfing, more surfing in my life.
My answer is the same, man. I love surfing, and I couldn't go to South America to ski this summer. I spent the whole summer in Big Sur in Santa Cruz, and it was one of the best summers of my life. I love surfing. I think it's my favorite sport.
I keep thinking I will have more surfing in my life, and I probably, I think this year I put in like 50 days of surfing, but
nice.
At some point the tables will, I keep thinking they'll shift.
You and I, we have to talk about this more in person sometime. That's the exact same. I always say, in the future, I'm going to ski 6 months, surf 6 months, and it's going to slowly be more surfing, where it's going to be like I ski 2 months and I surf 10 months, because I absolutely love surfing. What scares you the most in the mountains?
I mean, obviously not coming home, and avalanches too. It's just so, I mean, I'm sure you're going through it. You're living in a dangerous snowpack right now, walking in it every day. And it's like, the more you know, the less you know. And so I am incredibly humbled by the mountains.
What do you love most in the mountains?
They're so vast. It's so easy for me to I would say 70% of the time I go into the mountains, I ride a line I've never ridden on foot.
Wow.
And Yeah, I mean, just, variations. I'm not saying,
Yeah.
it's not like a new peak or whatever, but I'm always like, oh, I haven't been through there. And like right now, we've been in this pretty big high pressure. So we're riding lower angle stuff, but we can glide through these long flats. So I've been finding all these, beautiful groves of old growth trees that I've never been through and things of that nature. So just that and like this ultimate freedom and ultimate creativity, both up and down.
What's the funniest accident you've had in the mountains?
I mean, as far as mistakes in the mountains, I've made all of them. I've forgot things. I've shown up the trailhead missing something, or getting out there winter camping and being like, wow, no sleeping pad. It's going to be a cold night.
I've been there. I've done it all too. What do you think is the scariest accident you've had in the mountains?
The most scared that I've been is more when my brother, when I was young, probably 21, 22, 23, he got caught in a serious avalanche, and I was kind of the only person in a position to get to him, and he was fully buried. And
Whoa.
so that definitely woke me up, and still sticks with me.
What have been some of the most fear-inducing, kind of biggest risk adventures of your life? And this doesn't have to be necessarily snowboarding.
It's definitely snowboarding. And I think the Himalaya stuff, as far as like really being out of my comfort zone and playing a different game, was, that kind of rises to the top.
I do want to get more into that Himalayan spine a little later, because that just is otherworldly. Kind of on this subject, in your most recent film, Purple Mountains, I just watched an hour ago, you mentioned that, some of your best lines were ones where you're right on the edge of death. Can you explain that?
It's kind of like, I call it a white moment. And there's a great quote from a Russian bodybuilder about, white moment, where basically everything comes together, and you're on that edge of life and death, but you're totally locked in, you're totally comfortable. And like the whole world slows down, and you're just in total control amongst the sea of chaos, and you barely pull it, and failure is not an option, and you come screaming into the flats. And yeah, dude, I mean, that is mainlining life and death. I mean, it's just, and I'm those are incredible highs that have left me in tears. It's left me dry heaving. It's it's not something I am working to get my highs in a simpler manner, but that's an addictive thing, and I think it's dangerous. But those are, I don't reach highs like that without that life or death side of things.
And for our listeners, you started moving all over the place. Your eyes were shifting. Your hands were up like you were actually snowboarding. That was, I could really see just going there mentally for you took you to another dimension there for a minute. How many avalanches have you been in?
At least a dozen, but I say that with, where there's a lot of scenarios. And again, you fast forward to spring, and you're like, snowpack's totally stable. It snows 6 to 12 inches. And you're messing with 6 to 12 inches, and you're dropping in going, this 6 to 12 inches could slide right now. That's an example of clean terrain, how much I love clean terrain, which is why I love Alaska, which means if something does go wrong, you're not going over cliffs, you're not going into trees, you're not going into a valley. Clean terrain can erase a lot of bad, some poor decision making. So these are avalanches where I'm like, worst case scenario, I get caught in an avalanche and I get flushed off this face. And so you're in the avalanche going, oh man, I'm in the avalanche again. It's very rare that I have been in an avalanche that I didn't think was a possibility, and wasn't in a spot where I was like, I'm okay with getting slid off this face right now.
I have learned a lot from watching your movies over the years, especially the most recent stuff. And one thing that I repeat that you've said in the movies is, every time you're dropping in the backcountry, think about, if I get in an avalanche here, where am I going to end up? And I repeat that from you to people all the time. And I use your name to give it a little gravity. And
Thank
I
you.
think that's you're welcome. Yeah. And I think it's a really good, a great thing to have in your mind. Anytime you're about to drop in, you're like, all right, what's going to happen if it slides here? And there's a bunch of trees. Maybe we should find a different spot. But what you said previously, just now the having a clean run out, if you do get slid, think about where you're going to end up. And that's huge.
And the most important question is what happens if it slides? And so right now, I'm not super locked in on the Tetons, but it's like I know there's some deep instability. If it slides, it's going to be a couple feet deep and the whole slope is going to vaporize. That is a really scary answer to what happens if it slides.
Yep.
And that means you better respect the hell out of that. Come March, what happens if it slides? Oh, maybe I tomahawk off a 20-foot cliff and I hurt my arm, and I could show, we could show highlight reels of like, wow, that does not look safe. But it's like, we're talking what happens if it slides, and worst case scenario happens and we go away with a bruised ego and maybe a tweaked limb.
And speaking of worst case scenario, have you ever been hurt while snowboarding?
Really at a young age, probably around 21, I developed back issues. And by 30, I thought maybe my snowboarding was done. And it caused me to get really serious about health and things of that nature, and really dug deep on that and thought my days were numbered. Splitboarding totally brought me back to a point where when I went into splitboarding, I couldn't really ride the resort anymore. Now I'm riding the resort, like I said, like 60 days a year. We're riding right now. It's bulletproof and hard pack, and I can put in 6 hours on that stuff, no problem. And the irony of it, and I go into this story because now I look back and go, this bad back, and I got journals full of poor me. I got a bad back. Why can't I have a good back? My bad back has saved my knees, and it's made me become way more disciplined. And I have a morning routine. I have all this stuff, because once you have a bad back, maybe it goes dormant for 5 years, but you learn to really respect that. And you either, it's got to be incorporated into your life. And so now this thing that I hated, now I'm grateful for it.
Well, that's so cool to hear too, that split boarding, that full body motion, that maybe that endurance, that cardio helped your back, so that's also something we can all look forward to as we get more into backcountry skiing and snowboarding. You've been on snowboard expeditions all over the world. Which was your favorite snowboard expedition?
God, I would, they're all really special. I mean, Svalbard was really unique. The Alaska stuff, Mount Timlin was a really special trip we did in the Eastern Alaska range for a variety of different reasons. The Himalaya was just, again, like going to a different planet, which is always cool to get really out of your comfort zone. And then, quite frankly, since I filmed higher, my focus has been on these like long traverses, and those are incredible experiences, like really deep, just in a beautiful manner. Like to go and walk through these mountains for days on end is it just takes you to a really special place.
I have not done much traversing, but I would like to traverse the Sierra, as many people do someday, because it just, like you said, it's just so cool to get out there and completely lose yourself in the mountains. Where would you not go back to?
Where would I not go back to? I mean, I've been pretty, like, the stuff that I pick to go to, like, I definitely put snow quality high on the list. I've stayed away from just the obvious high and dry, high danger places. So I have really fond memories to everywhere I've been. Yeah, I mean, the altitude stuff is definitely a lot to bite off. It's like when I see a photo of something and I'm hoping that it's at a lower elevation. So the Himalaya is tricky, but it is such a rad place that we've had talks of another trip there. So I can't say that there's no place that I would totally cross off.
Where have you not snowboarded yet, but you really want to go and snowboard there?
Where have I not? I mean, Greenland would be really cool to go to. I'm just trying to find the right reason to go there other than like, I just want to ride my snowboard in Greenland.
That's good. I'm with you. Actually, I'm really trying to get on a Greenland trip myself to do some guiding. How many snowboard movies have you been in, and which was your favorite that you've been in?
So I've lost track, but I think it's about over 100.
No, geez, that's
Yeah.
insane.
And yeah, I think I crossed the 100 mark about at least 10 movies ago.
Whoa.
But for me, Deeper was a really special film just because it was like, we were so far out of our comfort zone. I kind of I had a really established crew with my brothers and stuff, making movies with TGR and Standard Films, and to go out on this foot powered path and then build up this crew. And we just were having so much fun. We just felt like everything was new, and we're like, this is the new frontier without doubt. And just the excitement of that, and learning the ins and outs of just keeping cameras working and all of it. The speed in which we were learning was really a special time.
The discovery and reality that you can manipulate this whole new world, that must have been just mind-bending for you. What's your favorite snowboard movie of all time, just to watch?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I watch the movies at the premiere, and then I never ever watch them again.
Uh-huh.
And I won't name any names, but there's snowboard movies that I'm in that I've never seen.
Uh-huh.
And so my kids have seen like virtually no snowboard films because it's like, that's my day job, and I don't bring it into the living room to be like, let's watch a movie. And so that's not a discredit to these films, but I guess Life of Glide is my favorite film that I have. I'm most proud of Deeper, but my favorite film to watch is Life of Glide because it's 12 minutes long, and it's basically this like a love story based around a poem that I wrote. And it's just this visually, just a really peaceful, beautiful film to watch. That is the one film that when I did take it on the road, I would sit and watch every time.
Nice, man. Goofy question. Do you think, is the skier versus snowboarder rivalry dead?
I mean, I never felt the skier versus snowboarder deal. And so I would say yes, but I could be wrong on that.
I agree too. If anything, I think it's kind of funny, just to poke each other and joke around. I never felt like there was any gravity behind it. What challenges you the most intellectually on a daily basis?
I mean, the climate stuff is incredibly challenging, and it makes me digging in on like snowboard business stuff is like a vacation from that. And
I bet.
yeah, I mean, the weight of the climate stuff it's significant, it's real, it's sadly a pretty toxic space to be public in. And so it's the greatest challenge of our time, without doubt.
And I do want to take a moment to say I appreciate what you're doing, because I know that it's tough. I mean, just the negative comments that we get on SnowBrains, and it's just about like happy skiing. And then you're actually in this, it's like, oh, sorry, we went skiing today. But, sorry that pissed you off. But then you are in this realm that is very charged, is very polarized. So I can't imagine. And we'll brush on that a little bit later too, because it's a heavy space you're in. So thanks for doing that. What is your favorite book or books?
The books I've gifted the most is Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. And that is this really entertaining short book that embraces stoicism, which it's kind of, I think I was naturally already like embracing that line of thought. And you can check out like the Daily Stoic has like a podcast every day. It's just like 3 minutes long. It's just a nice way that I listen to that when I make my coffee. Rules to Becoming a Knight is another book that I've gifted a lot. And then recently the California Field Atlas by Obi Kaufman that I've found is just really like it's about the California, and it's just brought this vibrance to a landscape that I've been looking at forever, and just like kind of now I'm seeing things I wasn't seeing before.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Our listeners love to hear about the books that people like. Now we'll dig in a little bit deeper on some of the bigger things that you've done in your life. Couldn't find a way to not start with how you changed from helicopter to foot-powered snowboarding. And I think it's one of the most remarkable aspects of your life and your career, because it's a dramatic change, making that from heli to foot-powered, especially with the filmmaking that you've been doing. And especially since you're one of the very best Alaska heli snowboard people on earth. So why did you make that change? And was there an aha moment?
There's definitely not a single aha moment. I think it's the way my mind works, is like, I'm chewing on these future steps and things. And so I've been wanting to embrace more foot powered stuff. And then it would come spring and it would be like, hey, let's do a camping trip. And it's like, dude, we got a segment to shoot. We're behind. We need shots. And we're going to be like 4 to 8 sunny days, and we need to be hellion and getting the most out of those. And then I just was like, you know what? The only way this is going to happen is I got to go all in on this. I can't do both. And then I quickly realized, like, to be able to be like totally on point, and I wanted to do the best, continue to like progress my snowboarding. It just happened to be that I would hike to get to that line. I'm like, I need every day in winter to get me to a point where I can take advantage of that March 20th stable 2 feet of pow sunny day where I'm cranking out 3-4 lines hiking. And the hard part was nobody really wanted to do that. And so then I just kind of was like, and it came into where they're like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to go and do, like, I'm all in on foot powered. And then so Deeper was a 2-year film because there was no money the first year. And
interesting.
And at that point, you're making these films and sponsors come in, they give their money, it gets to this really efficient deal. The last year before I started filming Deeper, I made 5 movies. I was in 5 movies. I didn't make them. I was in them. And so that scene was super efficient. And then so it's kind of like, the sponsor's like, hey, what's going on? Are you, we're ready to write the check to Standard and Absinthe and TGR. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. Not only am I not in those, I'm working on my own film, and it's going to take 2 years. And so Chris Edmonds was critical in that, because we kept hearing, the existing crews that I was working with, they're like, well, you can't keep batteries charged on a glacier. The lenses are going to fog, which all that stuff happened.
Of course.
And it was heartbreaking in the editing suite of Deeper, because, we're watching like the best day of my life, and we're down to 1 camera with a fogged lens. And,
oh, shit.
So I just really had to go all in on it.
So have the best lines of your life been heli or foot accessed?
Definitely foot powered. I mean, that's not to like disrespect. I mean, I had a ball, early Valdez days, early Haynes days. I mean, that was an incredibly exciting period of my life. But to sleep under the lines and figure them out and then walk up them and drop in on them, I mean, that's a whole different level. And then, quite frankly, it was on the 2nd year of Deeper where, my friends are like, man, how's the hippie snowboard film going? And, they're like, he's taking this environmental stuff really far. And my deal was like, if I can figure out how to hike these things, then I have so many more mountains to choose from. And then with Deeper, we ended up where I could say on our 2nd trip, what we ended up calling the Spine Institute ride, what I still consider the best lines of my life. And, one of those I had to sleep on top of and chucked my sleeping bag down and dropped in, shortly thereafter at sunrise.
I just watched that. And so that might segue nicely into my next question. Which lines of your life are you most proud of?
The Spine Institute stuff, Mount Timlin in the Alaska range was this really spiritual experience for a lot of different reasons. There'd been, I'd lost Joe Timlin the day before we went in there, and just a lot was going on in there. And that was the biggest and highest line other than Denali that I tackled in AK. You know, those really rise to the top, and to do those in the right fashion where you're like, man, this is like so green light. We put in the time, we waited, and to be in these incredibly dangerous places and being like, this is like the day. And Timlin's a great example, because I know a pilot out of Tok, and he's like, I've never seen it shape up like that again. And that window for opportunity to ride that thing was like maybe 6 hours long. And
Whoa.
to feel that, and then to be like, the window just opened and then we watched it closed. And you're talking about these things that, you know, these windows open up. So, you know, the technical lines, it can be so fleeting. The otter bodies, same way. And the Tetons, like, you would never want that line on your hit list, because you would drive yourself mad waiting for conditions to come and fall in, you know, to line up. It's got to be a scenario where like, oh my God, the otter body that I never considered rideable is totally green light right now, and let's go hit it.
And the otter body is on the Grand Teton in Wyoming, in the Teton Range, for our listeners. The Timlin thing especially, right? You're out there, you have a 6 hour window, you're out there for weeks to get to that 6 hour window. And it did revert my mind to an interesting place, because we've all lost friends in the mountains, as you lost your friend, Timlin. How many friends have you lost in the mountains?
Oh, I mean, definitely a dozen or so. Yeah, I mean, friends, acquaintances, too many for sure, and too many heroes. And that's the most terrifying thing, is when you lose heroes and you're like, man, they were my North Star and they died. And like, if that happens to them, who am I to walk around saying it can't happen to me?
Yeah, it's heavy. You know, almost everybody I interview here, I ask them that question, and the numbers are almost always about the same, about what you say. It's a challenging lifestyle, and we've all been through a lot with losing friends out here. Well, let's shift in. You keep mentioning your project, the Deeper, Further, Higher project, which was a 3-movie series you made with TGR, and it was very well done. It was very popular. And to be honest, it was very inspiring. It inspired me. I remember watching Deeper. I was in Japan, and it was a rain day, and just really got me fired up. Do you think that this project, the Deeper, Further, Higher project, was the crowning achievement of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is like a nice put together 3-piece movie that I did with my brothers, and the amount of energy that we all put into that was, yeah, definitely. And when it came, meaning the shift of how we were making the movies and then shifting to this new way of making movies, I do think that it was a bit of a paradigm shift. I feel like that also gave me confidence to go into Ode to Muir and Roadless and Purple Mountains and Life of Glide. And so kind of since Deeper and then Further and then Higher, like the work I've done since took a leap of faith with Deeper is the work that I am most proud of.
And you should be. It's a remarkable film. So if our audience hasn't seen it, please do. And I think that the paradigm shift you mentioned, I think that's really a true thing that's happening right now. You're seeing a lot more movies about hiking up and skiing down mountains and snowboarding down mountains. And it's really cool to see. It's a great shift in the industry. And I think it's inspiring a lot of people to get out there, which has been pretty fun. And you've mentioned a couple of times, I think it's the Fairweather Range where you had the Spine Institute. And when I watched that, I mentioned I watched it in Japan on a rainy day. And I still think it's, to this day, the most badass segment of any snow sports movie ever made. I mean, it's ridiculous. I remember it was zoomed in and it's just spines on top of spines. Like, you know, here's Jeremy and Ryland coming down and, oh, that's sweet. The spine ended and there's a kind of a cliff. And then, oh, it opens up and shit, it's another spine. They're still going. What the hell? It seems to happen a few times on those lines. It really is otherworldly. I guess I've been wanting to ask you this for a long time. What was it like climbing and riding those spines? And how did you know you could do it?
Well, I appreciate all that. And yes, and that coincided with like Alaska. The first trip we did to Alaska beat the crap out of us. 10
As
day
it does.
storms and da 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 da. And then with the Spine Institute, we went to the most wild place and had the best two incredible runs of weather that, I mean, Alaska laid down for us. And on a whim that I ended up there, it was all in the shade. And I'm like, I know when the sun hits that, it's going to look pretty. And it was, a lot, like we didn't even know what we had there. And then when it finally, cleared, because we got in there and then snow came in and so we didn't really see what we were sitting on for a while. And then it cleared and we're like, oh my God. And it just wasn't, it was what was on the table. And it was scary. It would, we all were, definitely having a hard time sleeping at night.
I bet.
We were way out of our comfort zone, but it was, that was like, you're in this life-changing situation and it's right in front of your eyes. And it was at the end of 2 years with Deeper where we had made every mistake. We'd struggled. We hadn't really got it. And it was all like, oh, that's cool. And then it was with that trip, it was like we just did the best snowboarding of our lives, and we did it on foot, which was the goal from the outset.
You definitely really got it on that one. That was so neat. Was it scarier to climb or to ride those spines?
That was the problem. Is the normally it's way scarier to climb them, but we were climbing this coulee that was scary because different things flushed into it, and we'd see it flush in the afternoons and be like, thank God we're not hiking now. But the lines we were going to ride had these closeout clip bands on them. So you're dropping in going, man, how big's the cliff? Is it going to go? Which spine is it? Is it the 12th spine? Is it the 15th spine? So where so much of the time when you do get on top of a line you just hiked, you're like, sweet, the teeth's taken out of it, I know exactly where I'm going, and you don't have that fear that you get when you just get dropped off on a helicopter. Is this terrifying thing, you can't see a damn thing. But with the Spine Institute, we had both the fear of climbing and the fear of riding down.
Yeah, I put myself in your shoes mentally sitting in those tents, and God, I would be sitting there looking at this stuff going, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. I mean, this is crazy, but that definitely helps to climb up because that gives you some tangible reality that you can sink your teeth into and understand, all right, we've seen it up close. We rubbed our noses in it. We can do it. Let's take a quick break here and hear from this episode's sponsor, the Icon Pass. A brand new season unlocked, the promise of adventures ahead, and endless stoke on the horizon. Now on sale. Own it all with the Icon Pass. With pass options starting at only $399 for an adult and exclusive spring savings, there's an adventure for every type of rider, both new to the mountain and longtime shredder. Lock in the 21-22 season with up to $200 savings on child passes, up to $100 in renewal discounts, and a new payment plan from as low as $0 down and 0% APR. From the second you score your pass, you've got an entire season of sweet stuff to look forward to. Explore pass options at iconpass.com. Alaska's been so pivotal in your career. How many Alaska trips have you been on now, man?
Solid 22 years of going to Alaska.
Wow, that's amazing. And what is Alaska?
Probably more. Probably 24 years of going to Alaska.
Right. And some years might have multiple trips. What does Alaska mean to you? How has Alaska developed you?
I mean, Alaska is snowboarding and skiing paradise in the sense of like, you have this coastal snowpack. It's low elevation. There's a ton of glacier ice. It gets this moist but cold snow. So you couldn't, on the planet is the perfect ingredients for riding steep lines in stable, deep pow. It's endless. I mean, it's truly, and the whole state is mountains.
Well, and again, I would tell our audience that Jeremy has just become animated again. He's moving around and throwing his hands around. You can see, it's Alaska does that to you. What would you tell someone who's never been to Alaska?
Well, I'd say Alaska doesn't give a shit about your plans. And you better have big windows of opportunity. Those spines are only made with like 340 days or probably, yeah, at least 320 days of weather. It's really rugged. It's super hard to get into the mountains just to strap into your skis or your snowboard. So it's a big commitment and you need time. But yeah, I think I'm incredibly grateful that if you say compare it to Antarctica, which is this beautiful, incredible place, but I mean, it is so far to get to. So in context to that it's not that far away from us, I just feel fortunate to have that in my life.
Myself included. I love Alaska as well. And I even tell people who haven't been there, try going in the summer even. There's so much more you can do there. And it's just, I mean, I'm an advocate for Alaska. It is something else because it is like the smile on your face right now shows it is a gateway drug, because then you look at Alaska and then you start looking at the map. You're like, oh my gosh, what else is out here? I still want to go to Kamchatka, which you've been to, but let's jump into your Himalayan spine, because that was another moment for me when I watched you ride. My understanding is that was in the Himalaya. I forget if it was India. I want to say India. And it was 20,000 feet of elevation. And it's one of the most impressive lines ever ridden. The poster is insane. People can Google it right now. And so I guess I just want to start with, how did you find this thing?
So the line, it's in Nepal. It's kind of a valley off the Khumbu ice field. And Sir Edmund Hillary had been up that drainage and taken a photo of it, and
Wow.
And then it turns out you can see it from Ama de Blanc. And so Chris Figenshaw was he came across it in a book, and then he was like, wow, it's not that far off the Khumbu, which is the super highway to Everest. Mind you, it's many days of walking super highway.
And Chris is a famous photographer from Jackson Hole. Continue.
Yeah, and Chris is absolutely, he's been a part of so many of the trips we've done, and he is what we call like an on-slope photographer, which very few people know how to operate a camera and actually climb the stuff. So he's, someone like when Chris is on a trip, I mean, we are partners in like, is this thing safe or not? So just one of the many behind the scenes like rock stars that are part of these films. But so we started to triangulate on it, realized that it wasn't 27,000 feet, which was very good. Yes. And then just started doing homework on it and talking like, are we crazy to think that this thing could be rideable? And then the big thing was going in the post-monsoon season. So like trying to go in there, well, the monsoon's the wet season, which the climbers all go for the driest part of the year. And so when we started doing the homework on it, it was like, well, no, I've never seen powder in the Himalaya. Like it's bulletproof, da, 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 da. And I'm like, well, what if we go in September and not May? And they're like, well, we've never been there, but that's when they get all the snow. And so I remember talking to John Krakauer and Conrad about it and being like, what do you think about going at this time? And they're like, yeah, they were very, I don't want to say optimistic, but like, that's for sure the time to go. And yes, it definitely snows at that time of the year.
And Conrad is Conrad Anker, the famous climber. So I got to ask, how steep was it? How long was it? And what were conditions like on that ridiculous Himalayan spine?
So it was about 2,000 foot of just like,
whoa,
perfectly like zero, like, I don't know, a lot of steep lines, they kind of like belly out and get it. So maybe on a 2,000 foot line, it would be like 1,000 feet would be the proper steeps. And then it would roll into like 40 degrees for the second half. This just held the pitch to the Bergschrund, to the valley floor. I mean, I'm always hesitant to throw out steep numbers, but definitely, right up there with like the steepest stuff you're riding in a place like Chamonix, the steep, Alaska steep, and
Over
just
45 degrees.
yeah, definitely over 45 degrees. And just really, again, what was so unique is how it held its pitch to the bottom. You're in this like altitude, like you never feel great at altitude, and kind of just in this altitude haze. No, there's really no warm up. We did one run before that. And so there's no like warming up to it. So it's like I hadn't been on snow in months, and it's like that's virtually your first turn in months.
Oh my God.
So yeah, just way out of my comfort zone, really. And on the good trips, you get into a scenario where you're like, man, I feel like I am like one with the mountain. I feel its heartbeat. I feel its breath. And in the Himalaya, I'm like, I am a stranger in a strange land right now.
I bet. And due to its steepness, and it looked like the conditions weren't terrific. I think I read somewhere that you may have had a self-arrest once or twice on the way down. The conditions got so challenging. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the first time we rode the wall, we were just trying to get to this saddle, and which was a battle. And we get to the saddle, and I'm like, we got to keep going. And I end up kind of biting off more than I probably should have. And it was like proper pow. But the problem was, like when you were snowboarding, you'd be on, relatively on top. And I came in and I didn't realize I was like completely out of breath snowboarding down the first time. And I'm like, I got to pull up. And I went to pull up on the spine, and this small little avalanche slowly, it's like picnic table size, slowly pulled me off the mountain. And that's where I was like, if there was a base to it, I probably could have self-arrested. And I went to self-arrest, and my hand just went into like sugary rocks, and there was nothing there. And then went for like probably the worst fall that I've ever had. And I went into that fall where I was already like out of breath. And then I did like a 1,200 foot, 60 mile an hour fall. And
whoa,
it was like the worst hold down you could imagine. So I've never had a hold down that bad surfing, where, seeing black, and my lungs and my eyes, and in my ribs, and everything was super maxed out on that fall.
Wow. Intense, man. And so then it sounds like when you went back up, you skied the big spine, and you obviously didn't fall, but you may have just needed to use your ice axe a couple times to stay on the mountainside.
Yeah. So the 2 days later, went back up, got fogged out, had to down climb and snowboard after spending like 4 hours up there.
Oh man.
And then basically climbed the peak 3 times in 4 days. And
whoa.
So got there on the day that I did ride off the main peak. And it's a lot like Antarctica, where you have it's a different snowpack, where this equatorial snowpack so I dropped in off of it, and it was like I could punch my hand into the snow and it would go in like 6 inches. And when I dropped into that line, I'm making turns and there's a crust on it, and I'm able to be like, cool, the crust was really like giving me good purchase. So I kind of ride like 200 feet on rope, and I'm making some hop turns, and I'm feeling good about it. And then I go off belay and I start riding some more, and I'm like, I can't get my edge through anymore, but I could like punch my fingers through the snow. And I don't know if you felt that in Antarctica.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Because dangerous, because it's not like this blatant, like, oh my God, it's ice, we're in trouble. It's like, and I've gotten into trouble in Antarctica where I'm hiking up going, wow, this feels great hiking up. And then the surface area of my edge, I can't get through.
You have good foot penetration, but not board and ski penetration.
Exactly. And so I'm up there and I'm like, oh my God, I I'm having a hard time like holding an edge. And then, yes, I make 2 heel side self arrests on that face, where with a self arrest, you got to catch it right away. But like one of them, I hurt my shoulder on it. And it's a move in snowboarding where it's real easy to go from a heel to toe, and you got your axe right in front of you and you throw it in the snow and you self arrest, no problem. The heel side self arrest, where you go toe to heel, and in snowboarding, you have way more power on your toe edge. So you can feel totally secure, and then you go onto a heel edge. And you're like, oh my God, I don't have the edge hold. And then you get flushed off a mountain. And so I had been building towards that, and I had learned. So this is getting a little too technical, but I started riding with my ice axe in my front hand, not my backhand. And going, when you go from toe to heel, you take your axe and you put it in the snow right away. And I got used to doing that. I did that, and twice, toe to heel, axe in right away, lose my edge, and then my arm gets pulled up and my axe catches me.
Wow, he's doing this for me. I can see him doing this in the video, and yeah, it does look extremely awkward. And I'm a skier, so I haven't experienced that. But that's I mean, in the end of the day, yeah, not great for your shoulder, but a badass move. And if you haven't seen the video or the pictures, I would just recommend Google Jeremy Jones Himalayan Spine. It is the sickest photo on sliding snow sports of all time, I think. It's ridiculous. We'll move on from that. Thank you for those stories, Jeremy. A lot of people are going to be jumping into the backcountry this year. And I'm just trying to get, from these people who have a lot of experience like yourself, what advice do you have for people just getting into backcountry skiing and riding this season?
Well, my advice is spring is definitely your time. Prior to that, I highly recommend using a guide, going to the well-known areas, being totally locked into your AVI forecast. When it's low, start going to the main trailheads. If it's, moderate or definitely considerable, don't even think about it. And that's not to say you can go into the mountains and avoid avalanche terrain. We've had a weird snowpack here too as well, where we've just been riding 25-degree, what we call meadow skipping, and embracing that side of things and just taking avalanches out of the equation. But it's a journey, and you just start slow, and it's much simpler in the spring when we're getting these big melt freezes and just getting up early and dealing with a low AVI danger.
Great advice, all great points. And I'd like to reiterate too that what he's talking about, the forecast, so moderate and considerable ratings for avalanche danger, that's where the most avalanche fatalities occur, is within those two. So not places to get complacent. I just want to hear your opinion on avalanche airbag backpacks. Another thing I like to ask people without experience. Do you use one? What's your opinion of them?
So avalanche airbags absolutely work. I use them. I don't use them all the time, but I definitely, it's part of my quiver. Like when I'm going to Alaska, I don't know the snowpack, then we're starting out with airbags. It's trickier, like the Tetons. I'm sure it's a greater debate because they're massive slide paths, and there's trees in the slide paths, and there's exposure in the slide paths. And so it's, but yeah, they work, they're heavier. So in the Sierra, I rarely use them. In Alaska, I use them quite a bit. And the Tetons, I go back and forth on it.
Great advice. I'm the same. I use them in places, and other places I don't. And a lot of that has to do with weight, is the way that I see it. And we've talked about before, we don't have to get into it here, but I think it can change your mentality sometimes and make you more aggressive. So I think it's good to really just know all those things before you step into it. Really quick, I just think a lot of people might not know that you were really into snowboard racing. And so just really quick, how do you think your snowboard racing helped you, develop skills that were applicable to the big mountains?
Well, much like we've seen in big mountain skiing, where racers really kind of switched over and had incredible success. Darren Rolf's, the kind of obvious one. But for one, you got to memorize courses racing, and then 2, you're riding really fast, and 3, you got to have incredible edge control to do well racing. So all those things, work is exactly what you need in big mountain riding. And
probably gives you good, I always thought just growing up playing basketball, just that getting that ethics of just sticking to your training program. I'm sure that really
Yes.
helped too, right? Because I don't think snowboard racers or ski racers are lackadaisical. They have a program and they stick to it. So we got to do protect our winners. As I mentioned before, thanks for doing this. Let's just start with the basics and we'll get into some more complexities. What does Protect Our Winners do?
Protect Our Winners unites the outdoor community to come together to, combat climate change. And really what we say is like unite the outdoor state and have this collective voice for action on climate.
And I should have said, Protect Our Winners is an organization, a nonprofit that Jeremy started. What year did you start that, Jeremy?
2007.
Okay, so it's been around for quite a long time, and it's definitely having an impact. Jeremy started this to fight climate change. What is POW's reach right now? How many people do you touch? Do you know how many members?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily like a member-based deal, but when we activate our full kind of reach in our alliance, we can get our message out to, up to 100 million people.
Holy shit. Wow. Congrats. I did not expect that number.
Yeah.
And so what do you think, and we'll get into some more of those details, but I think the overreaching theme of all this that is always on my mind, I think it's on everybody's mind, especially people who do want to see change, in our government and all these places. What do you think has to happen to see real change in the fight against climate change?
I mean, we need policy change, which, and I can tell you when I started Protect Our Winners, my goal was not to be like, wow, this is going to be great. We get to go to Capitol Hill and talk to elected officials, but it became really clear because when I started, it was like surround myself with experts. I did never consider myself an expert and still don't. So it's like get the smartest people in the world on climate together. And they quickly are like, look, man, changing light bulbs is important and water bottles and things of that nature. But without large scale policy change, we are not getting the CO2 reduction that we need. So that's why we are so active and have been politically.
And I agree with you. I think it has to come from essentially a governmental level. These need to be widespread changes across huge industries. And so this might make an easy setup. So what is Protect Our Winners' number one goal moving forward?
In a perfect world, we would end subsidies to fossil fuels, have our energy on an even playing field. Would be that in itself would be a significant win. And if you think about the fact that we are subsidizing this product that we know if we keep burning at the rate we're burning will, end humanity. That would be a big step forward to stop subsidizing what we know is killing humanity.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, and also the fossil fuels are finite, right? We are going to run out of them at some point, so it is good to have other plans in place. And I think what you're saying by evening the playing field is giving subsidies to renewable energies as well, which does make a lot of sense. So, so how do you think Protect Our Winners can create that lasting change? Do you think it's lobbying? Is it reaching out to people? Is it trying to push people to vote? Maybe all of those things.
Well, the reality is elected officials, and I don't mean this negatively, but they are more they're more followers than leaders. They do not want to lose their job. So at Protect Our Winners, up until you could argue this election, but no politicians ever lost an election due to their stance on climate. And if we can come as a unified voice and say, we want action on climate or you're going to lose your job, you're going to see action on climate really fast.
I think that is the right approach, for doing this, because the way that politics work, that would be how you get a response from politicians. And they would really lean into it if you could make that happen. And it does look like that might be in our near future. And we touched on this earlier, and it's something that I've dealt with some haters as well. And so I'm curious about, what is your response to the haters out there, to people who say that you used helicopters in the past to snowboard, so you have a bigger carbon footprint, and that doesn't line up with your messaging at Protect Our Winners? What do you tell people? Or maybe you don't respond to those people.
I got a lot going on. I'm running a business. I can't spend my time trying to win over haters. And so I do not look at comments on Instagram. So apologies to any thoughtful discussion that I miss out on. And that is, due to the, excessive, aggressive trolling, some of it professional trolls. That the downside of that is that meaningful person, and I do feel bad about that, where we could have a good conversation, but I can't spend my all day on social media fighting people that don't agree with me. So I guess, and then to finish that, my intentions are pure. They're backed by science, and I'm fighting for clean air, clean water, and a healthy planet for future generations. How that makes me the worst person in the world in some people's eyes, I don't know. It is what it is, and I refuse to let them alter my views or get to me to a point where it's like, you know what? I feel deep down in my soul that we are on the wrong path, and this is what I really care about. I'm going to put that on social media. To not do that because I'm worried about a bad comment, I couldn't look myself in the mirror, and I sure as shit couldn't look at my kids in the eye if I did that.
You mentioned that in the movie, essentially saying, I want to be able to look my kids in the eye in the future and say, I fought like hell to make this path change. And I thought that was a quote that really hit me. Does it blow your mind sometimes that people get pissed off at you for fighting for clean air and water?
No, I understand, we have to understand who our opponent is, what creates them. And the reality is you realize their news feed looks different than my news feed. And I think Purple Mountains was, the hardest part for me was I went out and hung out with people that I could agree with or, really got along with. And are nice people that there's a lot that we have in common. But when it comes to climate, which is the thing I hold closest to my heart, we totally don't see eye to eye on. And that's hard.
It is hard. Yeah. It's always a tough discussion. Well, let's jump over into Jones Snowboards, because this has been seemingly, and from my perspective, a success story that of large proportion. Why did you start Jones Snowboards?
I started because I wasn't getting the snowboards that I needed, specifically the split boards. McConkey, I was very close with him. He was doing all this fun stuff with when the spatula came out and stuff. And we were, and I'm like, he kind of opened up this whole world of new shape stuff. And I was seeing this directional rocker and things of that. And we were seeing kind of banana rocker and snowboarding, but I just felt like there was a ton of opportunity for free ride shapes, and there was a ton of opportunity for split boards, and none of the companies that I talked to wanted to put any energy towards it. And I was like, and really with the split board, I'm like, I need a better board to achieve my dreams in the mountains. And so I figured out how to do that, and with the belief that there's probably a couple thousand people that feel the same way as I do.
And the split boarding revolution began. So congrats on that. It sounds like you only made 700 boards the first year, and I'm sure it's quite a bit bigger than that now. It's great. And how do you balance you're the CEO, I believe. How do you balance the CEO position as well as your snowboarding career?
Well, I have incredible people that work at Jones. My wife, one of them, who really keeps the wheels on, but there's a team of awesome people out there. And going in from the get-go saying, you know what, I never had a great idea sitting in front of a computer day after day, and I'm out skinning with a notebook, and it's like, I view my job as I set the compass for the company, and I do that in the mountains. And that's where we come up with the product. That's where we come up with all things Jones Snowboards. And I think it's been this kind of secret sauce to it, is that I can spend that much time in the mountains, and I'm with team riders, and I'm with people of all different ages. And it's constantly, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Have you seen this? Da, 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 and that's where all the decisions are made, is on the skin track or the chairlift.
My next question, and I love that you skin with a notepad. How are you involved in the product development?
I mean, the product stuff I'm hyper involved in. I mean, that really, it's a lot of me coming back to the engineers and being like, let's try to figure this out. And so obviously the fact that I get to snowboard as much as I do, there's incredible people that do amazing work at Jones. So it's definitely a team effort, but I do think it's important to have one person that is like, hey, this is where I feel like we need to put our attention in. And I think that having those decisions made in the mountains is a really healthy place to do that.
And I think it's a big reason why people are excited about the brand, is they know that you're out there grinding and giving a lot of product feedback. I asked people for questions on Facebook, and I got a challenging one from James for you. So he says that Jones Snowboards, this is from James, Jones Snowboards are made in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. This is my only hesitation with the Jones brand. Do you have plans to move manufacturing to the USA in the near future?
Yeah, it's a great question, valid question. We've had to move factories 4 times at Jones.
Oh, wow.
It started in Switzerland, went to Tunisia, went to Austria. Now we're in Dubai. Every time we move a factory, it's like, where's the best factory in the world to produce snowboards? There's a lot of factories out there that are under capacity and are closing down. So it hasn't made sense for us to start our own manufacturing. We are a global company. About 40% of it's made in the US.
Maybe not everybody knows this, but Teton Gravity Research, the big time film production company, TGR, is run by your brothers. And so what's it like having your brothers running TGR?
I mean, it's been a dream come true that I've had some of the best days of my life making films, sitting next to my brothers. And we've been able to, it's like every film that I've ever directed or produced, or I've definitely been in non-TGR films, but the ones that I've really leaned in with have all been with my brothers. And making films is an incredibly difficult journey, but it's been awesome to be on that journey with my brothers, and just grateful that I get to do that.
It's a very cool scene. And how do you think TGR has contributed to your career?
Significantly. No question. I have benefited greatly from the relationship.
And you might not be able to share this, but are you able to share any of your kind of future filmmaking plans?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple things in the work. It's crazy with the films. I mean, I'm on starting with Deeper, I've made, I think, 8 films since then that I thought was going to be my last film. And so there's a couple in the works that, funding is just incredibly challenging with all films. It's
sure.
Incredibly challenging. Hire too, I could have funded really simple. But I wanted to switch it up after that, but yeah, more along the line, I really like these traverses. There's different things in the works that I have no idea if they'll come to fruition or not. And I'm okay with that.
Oh, it's good, especially if you have over 100 movies already under your belt. You're probably feeling pretty comfortable. I'd love to hear why people live where they live. My understanding is you grew up in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and now you live in Lake Tahoe for quite a while, specifically North Lake Tahoe near Squaw Valley. Why do you live in Squaw? Why do you live in Tahoe?
I think I live in Tahoe for the waves.
There you go.
California from a 12-month a year perspective. I mean, quite frankly, I moved here when I was in the heart of my pro snowboarding career. I was competing a ton. There was a bunch of events in Tahoe. Reno was an easy airport to fly to contests from. And then over time, I fell in love with the Sierra and just, I really enjoy the riding in the Sierra. And then I really love the 12 months a year kind of side of things. I love that Ocean Beach is 3 hours from my house. And just, of those 50 days that I surf a year, I mean, this year, all 50, a couple days in Oregon, but, we're all in California. That if I lived, even in Utah or Wyoming or someplace further away, I probably would have surfed 5 days this year. That's not cutting it for me.
No, I mentioned earlier that because I was unable to travel this summer, I surfed the California coast, and it was the most I've ever surfed in a year. I got 114 days this summer. I just have two more questions here. You have a family, but you've had a family for a long time. Has that ever changed your risk tolerance, having a family back home?
I mean, I had a wife at home. I've been with my wife for a long time, so I never wanted to, take risks without her. But I do feel like the stakes are higher, and I think my tolerance for risk is less. But then I, like 2 years ago, climbed pontoon a meteorite with Cody and was like, man, I don't know if I would have done that 10 years ago. So it's, that's kind of the dance that we do. And I like to think that I'm getting smarter and maybe less risk averse, but I'm still out there every day and at times tagging some big lines. Yeah. So who knows?
It's tough. Yeah. The risk assessment and the risk tolerance is always changing, and it's extremely dynamic and complex. That's for sure. So Jeremy, this is the coronavirus season. We're going through a pandemic right now, very challenging. It's worse than ever right now in January, but there are some silver linings out there. Have you found any silver linings this ski season?
God, I absolutely. The time that I've had to spend with my kids, I mean, my daughter is 15, for example, and, that's time that it's like bonus time. And then the amount of split boarding that we did last spring and now and just resort riding. I mean, of those 50 days I've had on snow, I mean, at least 25 of those are with my kids. And, yeah, so I ride with my family a ton. And so that's been a big silver lining. Of the 50 days surfing, every one of those is with my kids.
Oh, nice.
So, and mountain biking and we, just the pace that we were at with my kids playing multiple different sports, and just, it was so chaotic. So to slow down and then like tighten up this family unit and the amount of games and cards and things that we've done, the family time has been incredibly special. And then for me, when it comes to snowboarding, most of my snowboarding is done driving distance from my house, but business travel is about 95% of my travel. And to have that wiped away has been a huge win for me.
That's great. Those are some solid silver linings. I really like the family idea because I feel like we've gotten back to some of our ancient human rhythms that have really felt good. Jeremy, that's all I've got for you today. Do you have any thoughts or ideas you want to share here at the end of the show?
No, just appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully we get out for a turn or two.
Absolutely, man. I'd love to get out there with you. It was so good talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Jeremy.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much for listening to the SnowBrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about SnowBrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at SnowBrains. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Icon Pass. Whether you ride 4 days next winter or whether you carve out over 20, there is a pass perfect for your next adventure. From the $399 Icon Session Pass 4-day to the far-reaching Icon Base Pass to the full access Icon Pass, now is the time to own the stoke and start dialing into what awaits. 21-22 Icon Pass, now on sale. This episode was edited by Robert Wilkinson. The music was done by Chad Crouch. I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.